Yes, good morning, everyone. It's great to have everybody here. My name is Dan Kraft, and on behalf of everyone at Forum Europe, I'd like to welcome you all here to this year's European Space Forum. This is the fourth year now that we've held this event, and it's great to see it grow over the years. I think this year we have a record number of people registered. We have more than 400 people registered. And I looked this morning, it's from across 26 different countries from across Europe and beyond. So great to have everyone here. And we're really looking forward to what I'm sure is going to be two excellent days of discussion over the next couple of days. So we're going to be getting started very shortly. But before we did, I just wanted to mention a few things on the housekeeping side. So first of all, I wanted to say a big thank you to all of our sponsor and partner organizations who've supported this event. So you can see the logos of all of the different organizations who've been involved in the event across the top of the banner here. And also I'd like to specifically mention our partners, GESOA, also ESA, who are participating at the event, and also, of course, the Belgian presidency, who very kindly also supported the event. So thank you so much to each and every one of the sponsors, the partners. Without you, this event's not possible, so really do appreciate your support of the event. Next to mention the Wi-Fi. So there is Wi-Fi available throughout the conference center here. So you can see on the screens, you need to access the network NHOW. And then the username is NH and the password is Wi-Fi. So that should give you access to Wi-Fi then throughout the hotel here. When you get online, for anybody who uses Twitter, or no, sorry, X now, isn't it? Anyone who uses X or social media, we do have an event hashtag. The event hashtag is EU Space Forum. Again, you can see that on the screens and the banner. So please do use that if you are posting any messages or looking on social media to see what other people are posting about the event. Also, when you're online, on your delegate badges, at the bottom of your badge, you can see a QR code. Now, that QR code would enable you to access all of the conference proceedings. So all the slides from the presentations that are being made, other details, the event program, and everything like that is available electronically using that QR code. So please do use that. Any problems accessing that, then let myself or any of the event team here know. Just wanted to say a couple of words about security as well. So unfortunately, there have been a few incidents recently in Brussels of laptops and things being stolen at events. So just would like to remind everyone to please be vigilant with your laptops, your valuables, and make sure that during breaks, maybe take those with you rather than leaving them in the room. So just be vigilant, and I'm sure you won't have any issues on that. And finally, to mention the chargers. So there are some chargers. Anyone who wants PowerPoints, there are some on both sides of the room, but they're kind of down the middle of the road. So if you're not close to a charger and you need to charge a laptop or a phone, there is also a table at the back of the room which has charging points there. So feel free to use that as well. Okay, so as I said, we've got a very busy 2 days ahead of us. So delighted now to be starting with our opening keynote session. And really happy to have here with us Ludwig Müller from ESPI, who's going to be saying a few words to introduce the topics and then introducing our keynote speakers. So Ludwig, great to have you here. Welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Welcome to Brussels. So this European Space Forum is set for the edition 2024. It's about leadership, global leadership. And we are in the Inspire room, so I hope we will be inspired early in the morning. Before we will have a fantastic panel, which in fact will have representations from national government, intergovernmental structures, EU and global actors, institutional and private associations. Maybe a quick word, and if we can go, it's already on. Setting the scene. So I'm the director of ESPI. My name is Ludwig Müller. ESPI is a think tank based in Vienna. We now are about 35 people there. Independent advice to decision makers, members, most of the agencies in Europe across, also the Commission, also Eutelsat, I should say, EUMETSAT and others. And we like to pride ourselves with being independent and giving advice on the system and also supporting events like these and maybe giving sometimes a perspective. Called here Setting the Scene. In a way, it's really something where we want to shine a light on where are we in Europe, where we maybe want to go in Europe, looking at scale of things, looking at economy and impact, looking at power and space power, and also the political angle. So you'll see these for scale, economy, power, and political. It's the first of, and it's in a way, and we try probably to, by next year, to issue something that would do this more regularly. So measure the temperature of Europe in space and related. Now, let me start with a recent speech here by the President of France, Macron, at the Sorbonne just a few weeks back. And actually, with a significant statement, and I would argue it's maybe one of the firsts where space is actually put in the club of, let's say, the big five. So next to artificial intelligence, which you see in many places mentioned, quantum computing, biotech, and energy. And that's quite remarkable to see this at top political level. And a clear statement to make Europe a global leader, and we're back to leadership, by 2030. It's an ambitious goal in 5 of the most emerging and strategic sectors. In fact, I would argue, we'll come back to this, this is transversal across the economy and society. And there was also a clear mention on the need to reaffirm the goal of 3% of European GDP assigned to research. So this is not about space, it's a whole package of research, but it gives you a notion, and we'll come back to this, how do we measure, if you look at this in more detail. Ambitious political statement, create momentum. So if we want to scale this and compare us, if you computed those 3% and you make some assumptions that those 5 will have to share it, and the 5 are not the only ones in the rooms, you get to something that brings you in the order of 70 billion euro a year. And if you look at where we are in the status quo in Europe today, we are at 0.07% GDP, 17 billion. And we shall see next year with the ESA ministerial how this may evolve, and we are looking forward to see this grow significantly. Now, ourselves at ESPI, we issued last year a vision. It will be available also here in a printout version. We have it online on the system. It basically projects and proposes where Europe might be in 2040. And compared to Macron, we were quite modest. So we said, oh, maybe we should be at 0.15%. This is still a doubling. Should say this includes also private invest, which is today about 10 to 15%. So 85% and more is still public money next to private. I should say, if you look into who in Europe is performing on this level today, I'm happy to say that there are a few, and in particular, it is France, it is Italy, it's Luxembourg. And if you look at most of the others, the doubling and maybe sometimes more would still be required. So there are some actors that operate on this level. And to conclude, if you compare this to the States, you're back to roughly what Macron and our assumptions made. We did not reverse engineer this. We made assumptions, and you can get to a number that seems to make sense. So somewhere between the 29 billion and the 70 billion, one would argue, this is where Europe should sit if you want to be relevant in the future. Now, why would you do it at all? It's not about space for space. In fact, it's not about the space economy. I think it's what space can bring to the wider economy and society. Everybody talks about 1 trillion space economy by 2040. It's disputed as a figure. We could argue it is 500 billion or 1 point something. And I would almost say it's maybe missing the point, because this is not what you put in the political debate. What you really put in the debate is where's the benefit in sectors like security and defense, transport and mobility, weather, climate, telecommunications, food and agriculture, and others. And if you do this, and people do this in other sectors, so space is not alone being transversal. We mentioned before new energies. You have your batteries, semiconductors, very prominent. Pharmaceutical, a very, very big market. You see 4 times the size of space and probably more. And they have done assessments. You have people that do this for a living to look into how does this multiply into sectors of the economy, in business cases, in enterprises, in policies of sectors of ministries. And you'll see multipliers of 6, 7, or sometimes even multipliers of 9, like in the case of batteries. This is mapping on use cases. This is mapping on sectorial policies. And if you do the same for space, we did it. It is a bit of a black magic. It is something that certainly needs more study, but you get to a similar multiplier. And then the 1 trillion by 2040 brings you to 7.9 trillion. And that is a number that maybe for politicians should be something to being made aware of. The UK Space Agency likes to say that about 40% of the UK economy depends on space. Again, this depends how you measure it, but it's significant. One example, we have EUMETSAT in the room, Paul is somewhere here. 160 billion per year benefit of weather forecasting from space, 160 billion. This is 1/3 of today's space economy. It's just the benefit in one sector. So I think this argument is underused. I think it's something that needs to be developed and put into the debate. Now, coming back to space power and where does Europe actually sit if you leave this room and you leave Europe and you compare what is happening in India, in China, and certainly in the US. We have, in fact, quite a substantial work on this. 96 KPIs, how you measure it. There are hard KPIs, capabilities. There are soft KPIs, how it actually penetrates policies in other sectors, digital and others. And if you do this, you can see that Europe is not a space power yet. And I think we should be honest with us. When it comes to space applications, I think the situation is different. We have great programs, but there is more to this. Security and defense, human space exploration, typically are pillars of any space power. Both of them today in Europe are not at par, to say the least, with the global competition, because it's also a competition. Now, if you zoom in, and this is just one aspect, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, Europe as a space power, and you just look into what is more soft skills. So this is not number of satellites or a space station. This is really, how do you apply space for something that is foreign policy, security and defense policy? Unfortunately, a topic that is increasingly relevant if you look east. And you see that the measures for the US, China, Russia, the dosage between those foreign and security and defense policies differs slightly, but you see that overall, Europe is placed somewhere between, say, the top 3 tiers and then Japan and India. And I can tell you, as you know, the vector of India, for instance, is certainly going up. And you see that in particular, when it comes to security and defense, Europe is at the low end. You see that Russia is very high on this, China and the US. So that is some food for thought. There is more behind these numbers, and it is just to be honest with ourselves what we are strong at. I repeat, space applications, no doubt, Copernicus, Galileo, and the future, hopefully, IRIS². But if you look at the full picture, there are some gaps. So what we did very recently at the EU elections, we measured how does space actually appear in manifestos. And that is very interesting. And you see here the numbers of 2019 and 2024. We went to 144 policy manifestos of different policy parties to see where does space actually appear in the minds of those that are not space people. And you see the economy is first. People are concerned about prosperity. They are concerned about down-to-earth things. And in this context, under this heading, space appears most prominently, which I think is good news. So space and its value for the economy is recognized. Then security and defense, you see there is a big jump from 2019 to 2024, and that is Ukraine, certainly. And we see this shift, and it will stay. If I jump down a bit the line, you notice that green is very low. So politically, green doesn't sell the same way as it used to be, and we may also need to be aware on all the beauty we have in the programs, and we should certainly maintain. And myself, I worked on Copernicus for 10 years, and it's a beautiful program. We should continue to develop it, but it cannot be the only piece of a strategy. And then if you go down, you see space. And space for space, in fact, is not so much a topic. People do not write chapters in the policy manifesto about space, which is maybe also good because they do it where they put space in the context of sectorial policies. The other good news is there's an overall increase in the mentioning of space in these programs by 41% over 5 years, 41%. And the other news is this is true for the whole policy spectrum. It's not one single policy party. Now, I will conclude coming back to the way we phrased it in SP 2040, where we say there are three things you need to look at. So in the center, it's the capabilities, those pieces we all know best. That is satellites, it is rockets and the likes. And they are obviously the piece you need to do anything. But you need a foundation, you need people, you need capital, you need talent, you need finance, you need a workforce, you need a competitive industry. But on top, it's about the policy impact. Without policy impact, we will not be able to reach the scale that is required. And policy impact is, in a simplified way, on two axes. One, into sectorial policies of governments, parliaments, and the likes. And next to it, into the business cases of companies, of industries that really can make the economic benefit, return on investment on space. And this, with 85% of public money to influence also and support the emergence of the commercial part. So this is a bit to step back, look into where we stand in space today, the strong points, and maybe also comparing us in a realistic way. We will do this in more detail in the future. I'll probably issue a report a year, maybe have an event on it. And with this, I would conclude, and I would like to invite, if we have, as the first speaker, yes, Timo Pesonen. Thank you that you could make it. We know that you have a busy agenda. So I would introduce Timo Pesonen, Director General for Defense Industry and Space, European Commission, and I think you will focus on competitiveness and resilience. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludwig, and always nice to start the morning with a bit older picture, so I look younger than I am actually am. I'm sorry I'm a bit late, I've been in Brussels since 1991 and still sometimes the Monday morning traffic surprises me. It's a great honor for me to open this European Space Forum. I would like to extend my gratitude to Forum Europe and our partners, the European Space Agency, the Global Satellite Operators Association, and the European Space Policy Institute for making this event possible. And thank you, Ludwig, for a very eye-opening first presentation with very good graphics also. And I would like to continue discussing with you a little bit on these topics, how we can pursue them to the agenda of the future Commission and the future Commissioner for Defense Industry and Space. Today we gather to discuss the future of space in Europe under the crucial theme of sustainability and its intersection with other key elements such as competition, innovation, security, and connectivity. It is a very timely moment to discuss space, not only because of the geographical situation in Europe, which is dramatic, Russian aggression against an independent sovereign state of Ukraine in our neighborhood, crisis in Middle East is worsening, and at the same time the European Commission is at the crossroads with the start of the new Commission soon this autumn, and we are starting to prepare the next multi-annual financial framework, which the Commission is supposed to table next year. And of course, this requires a diligent preparatory work, undertaking already now, and contribution from all of you are more than welcome. With security and sustainability being among the main concerns of EU citizens, as shown by the results of the recent Eurobarometer, just published before the parliamentary election, space is bound to be at the heart of the upcoming political developments. Ludwig already referred to that in his graphics. And we need to seize this opportunity to create a future space policy that positions the European Union at the forefront on the global stage. Yes, we are not space power compared to US, but I think that we are emerging to be a space power, and our, let's say, prime constellations are actually even better than the ones across the seas. Today, I would like to focus on an element that underlines everything we are discussing here today, i.e. the competitiveness. We can be proud in Europe that the implementation of our space program has strengthened our technological expertise and, more importantly, enabled European companies to position themselves as leaders in the global space sector. Traditionally, our space industry has been enjoying competitive advantages and contributes significantly to the EU's trade balance. But remaining competitive requires innovative means and meaningful innovation. First, we need to valorize Europe's untapped innovative potential. We have a unique advantage in Europe with first-class research and development institutions, universities, national space agencies, high-tech companies, well-established big space players, and as well as many space and digital newcomers and startups and SMEs. Unlocking and integrating the potential of the whole European space ecosystem can significantly strengthen our industry and make it more competitive-proof in the future. Secondly, access to private funding is a real issue, particularly for small and medium companies, often forcing them to seek growth opportunities outside the EU. This leads to a loss of capacity to innovate and seriously deprives Europe of valuable expertise. We all know that. We all know this. And it's not only the space, it is in all our industrial sectors the same challenge. How to get access to private funding, how to mobilize investors and business angels to invest in Europe. To address this, the European Commission launched 3 years ago a Cassini initiative to support entrepreneurs, startups, and SMEs in the European space industry. And we see that Cassini is already making a difference. Over the last 2 years, more than 600 companies have already benefited from Cassini actions, raising a total of 1.8 billion euros. Of course, my ambition is much higher for the future budgetary period, but it's premature to speculate with any figures at this stage. Clearly, the space sector is changing, and we need to adapt how we act, stepping up our role as an anchor customer and facilitating new space companies access to public contracts. The European Commission, together with European Space Agency, together with my good friend Joseph Aspacher, we kicked off a new procurement scheme, a dynamic purchasing system, to support European space startups which aim to deploy satellite constellations and become commercial Earth observation data suppliers. With it, we awarded already contracts to 9 European space startups last year. We also did this with the flight ticket initiative earlier this year, selecting 5 companies to create a pool of launch service providers ready to offer services in the period of 24 to 26 for needs of the European Commission and ESA, starting with in-orbit demonstration and validation. So we are hands-on with our startup companies to create them the access to the technology and access to the financing, and then i.e. chances to grow. IRIS² will also support these efforts by embarking European new space towards governmental and mass market applications. And we will open up procurement to more new space players in the field of space and situational tracking. Dear friends, looking ahead, there are 3 key drivers I would like to highlight quickly for the future of our space industry: competitiveness, resilience, and freedom of action. Supporting competitiveness of our space industry. What are we doing? We are all aware about some of the key challenges that we face. Growing international competitors that in some cases benefit from large subsidies. The launcher and SATCOM industry are under profound disruption. Unbalance in the market access to global markets, and insufficient public and private investments in the EU. In the coming years, investment and regulation should come together in support of the competitiveness of the space industry. With the EU space law, we aim to create a single market for space. In all 27 EU member states, we intend to harmonize rules on safety, resilience, and sustainability of space activities. And we will keep in mind important principle of proportionality, so that we do not treat startups and newcomers in the same way as we deal with the big primes. We hope that the EU space law to be presented early by the next Commission. In parallel, we need bigger investments in space, both at European, national, and private levels. In public and private investment, Europe lags behind the US. The figures of Ludwig were very telling. We need to do much more in the field of research and innovation. It was actually at the end of the previous century when the Commission launched at that time the Lisbon Agenda, i.e. to make the European Union the most competitive economy in the world, and we are still lagging behind. There was a target of 3% or RTD investments. Some member states, they reached that, but overall, we are lagging behind, so we need to speed up. In particular, on the space, we need to reflect how our procurement rules can best support the investment journey in the field of space. They are sometimes cumbersome, they are sometimes heavy, so we are seriously looking how we can facilitate the procurement, of course, without compromising the principles of equal treatment in the procurement. Second key driver is the resilience of our space infrastructures, a must in the current geopolitical context. The days of naivety are over, my friends. We have to be able to protect our assets, our infrastructures, and our data. Space is more and more critical infrastructure. We should be therefore better in protecting it. We are also strengthening the resilience of the EU space sector through information sharing, knowledge transfer, and capacity building through soft policy tools. This is the purpose of the EU Space Information Sharing Analysis Center that has been launched in April. In parallel, we should also continue decreasing our strategic dependencies to be less exposed to global disruption. Decrease dependencies, strengthen independencies, and strengthen our strategic autonomy. For example, we are ready to combine our forces with ESA to develop EU sources for 7-nanometer semiconductors for space missions. The third driver is our freedom of action in the field of space. Autonomous European access to space is essential for the EU's institutional and commercial needs. We are all obviously looking forward to launching the Galileo and Copernicus satellites with Ariane 6 and Vega C. But we must also support new competitive and sustainable solutions, as well as a robust offer of launch services in the European Union, meeting the needs of all of the space sector. Our approach to access to space must be more service-oriented, strengthening both competition and European preference. We also need to be clear about enhancing the use of space for security and defense. This was clearly formulated in the Space Strategy for Security and Defense adopted last year. EU space program can support security and defense capabilities. A Galileo Public Regulated Service, PRS, is a prime example of such dual-use service. And we are currently exploring the options for a future Earth observation service for governmental use that would strengthen the surveillance and intelligence capacities of member states and the EU. Also, we need to better understand what is happening on the orbits and have enhanced space situational awareness capabilities. Dear friends, let me conclude by underlining that addressing challenges of European space industry requires, above all, sincere cooperation. Nobody can do this alone. I count on the support of the new European Parliament, of the member states, ESA, industry, and the whole European space ecosystem in this common journey. Let us work together towards sustainable, competitive, and secure future for European space. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timo. Competitiveness of industry, I think it's very clear we need the support to an industry, also a critical mass, in fact, to be still at scale when it comes to international competitors. You mentioned the disruption on the launcher and the SATCOM. In fact, yes, we have two disruptions. Everybody talks about reusable launchers, but I would argue we have a disruption. Everybody goes from GEO to LEO, and this is on the use side. And it's significant. I think we, with IRIS² also, but maybe beyond, we need to act also on that aspect. You mentioned also security and defense. I think it is a key element in this whole setup. And let us recall that globally speaking, more than 50% of the public funding into space is in security and defense. And if you looked at the European numbers, they are far, far from it. So with this little wrap up and link to the next speaker, so Arti Holomainen, is it not you? Yes, it is you in my list. Oh, okay, fair enough. I'm sorry. Maybe my mistake. I have a printout. It's not a problem at all. So we would continue with what is Ursula in German, right? I'm sorry. So you are, now you caught me off guard. Just a sec, I need to So you are the minister commissioner for the incoming presidency, Hungary. I'm really sorry that we missed the sequence of the ladies, but the floor is yours. So we're looking forward to what you are proposing, maybe with the perspective of the presidency on space. Please.
Thank you very much. And this is a great honor for me to be here. And thank you for the invitation. Distinguished directors, excellencies, colleagues, and guests, I'm pleased to address you on behalf of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Outer Space. Postponed due to the growing number of commercial activities in space and the growing threats in space posed by space debris. We also reaffirm that the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space and its subcommittees play a primary role in discussing current and emerging challenges and for reaching consensus, leading to the development of internationally agreed legal regimes, in particular on space debris, the co-development, strengthen the internal market, and integrate small and medium-sized supply chain. The EU's space program provides crucial capabilities such as Galileo and Copernicus to member states. Hungary closely follows the development of these systems and relies on their data. While we celebrate these successes, we must also look forward to the future flagship programs like the GovSatcom and the IRIS² and their implications for shaping European space policy. I thank the Spanish and Belgian presidencies for emphasizing space. Recently, the Council approved conclusions on the EU space strategy for security and defense, reaffirming commitment to international law and responsible space activities. Space traffic management was also prioritized, addressing the challenges of congested orbital space and the need for a common EU approach to safe and a sustainable space policy. Strengthening Europe's competitiveness through space was highlighted as crucial for maintaining a resilient European space sector. As Hungary closes the trio presidency, we will continue addressing key aspects of the EU's space policy. We call for a comprehensive approach to handle and mitigate challenges, risks, and threats to the peaceful use of outer space. There is a pressing need for a legislative proposal to increase the resilience of space systems and services across the EU. Hungary remains optimistic about tabling such a framework, commonly known as EU space law, during its presidency. In line with this priority, we aim to adopt Council conclusions on the midterm review of the EU space program and reinforce European competences in the space sector. Europe must find its instruments to become a space power by leveraging its capabilities and fostering a culture of innovation, strategic expertise, regulatory knowledge, and international cooperation. We strongly believe that mankind's history will be written in space throughout our century. Hungary, assuming its presidency shortly, wants to be an integral part of this dynamic process and make a meaningful contribution. I wish you all an inspirative conference and exciting discussions in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, apologies for change of sequence. In fact, you are incoming EU presidency, and in fact, we still have a presidency in the room here, and I would like to invite and maybe hear some achievements and maybe recommendations for the future by our next speakers. Thomas Dermien, State Secretary for Economic Recovery and Strategy Investment, Government of Belgium. The floor is yours, Thomas.
For the best way to do it. First, the incoming presidency, and then the one for the last 6 months, so that we can basically reflect on what has been done and what still needs to be done. And there is still a lot on our plate. So thanks a lot to the European Space Forum for organizing this. I think it's a great event to collectively reflect and also exchange on the priorities of the next few months. It has been mentioned in the introduction of Timo, but the world we know is changing, and space is becoming a field of economic, scientific, or even military competition as we see it before our eyes in Russia and Ukraine. And space is becoming indeed, again, the epicenter where the balance of power is displayed. We are witnessing the beginning of a scramble for space and great power competition to control the resources of outer space. This race in space, the second space conquest, as I like to say it, demonstrate at least the need for two important points. The first one is a fresh set of rules to govern the ongoing development in space. The second one is the critical need for protection of our infrastructure, making sure that our citizens and our businesses are ready to face these new threats. I am certain that the expertise of each actor and their complementarity can only contribute to building a stronger European space ecosystem. We are very happy that the conclusion from the Space Council, from the ESA ministers and the ministers from the European Union have been adopted and can collectively contribute to strengthening Europe's competitiveness. It is indeed crucial to develop this competitiveness in the key sector of space to maintain a resilience, to protect our assets, and to ensure our independence or in these uncertain times. The sequence of events that we held together on May 22 and May 23rd in Belgium was a great diplomatic success. May 22 was also a very important day for Belgium, as we learned that the two first astronauts going to the ISS, Sophie Adenau and Raphaël Liégeois, were announced. They are now continuing their intense training in Houston for flight scheduled in 2026. This allows me to mention one of the many challenges we face in Europe, which is the lack of qualified labor on the job market, especially scientific and technical jobs. And I think that this concern is also relevant for your sector. We rely on space not only to deliver on key challenges, but also to promote science, technology, engineering, and mathematics as a field of inspiration and as a field of study for the young, talented people that we have in Europe. The younger generation will be tasked with solving tomorrow's challenges by advancing science and technology. I don't know if there are a lot of young people that dreams about solving complex equations, of making chemistry, but I know for sure that they all dream to go to space and to explore the outer space, and we must use also the space sector to promote STEM in our society. We are on the eve of a new commission. Europe is also on the verge of making very difficult choice. I think that the question that was raised in Enrico Letta's reports on investment and common markets is very relevant. The financing model for space activities must be profoundly revised, as well as the institutional governance model. We need better collaboration between the different levels of institution. The question of pooling common space capabilities has been going for years in Europe. Also, the question of pooling common resources from space and defense. I know that these issues are not easy because they question some very intimate questions for member states on national defense. In Belgium, for example, we decided, and it was not easy, that we were going to pool significant military resources for the ESA funding. 100 million of our defense budget was pooled into the ESA budget and to be used to finance dual space capabilities. This is a first step towards a better use of our budget and a better convergence between civil and military use. And we strongly encourage member states, especially small member states, to explore similar avenues for the future. Let's be honest, it's one of the only way to increase significantly space budget. I will finish my speech here. We can talk for long on what we've done during this presidency, but we must be aware that it's only by getting the best talent into space, by working better together, but also by pooling common budget into space activities that we will move the needle. We, as a member state of the European Union, we have this duty towards European industries who form the economic and social fabric of which we can be proud, but also towards our citizens who counts on us, who counts on our realism and pragmatism to ensure their security. Europe must adapt itself, Europe must reinvent itself, Europe must defend its interests with a sense of national pride at European level. Thank you for your attention and have a great conference today. Thank you very much.
Merci, Thomas. And I think you had very clear words. And I just want to echo very few. You mentioned the protection of infrastructures for the benefit of citizens. I think economic resilience to be shock-proof for things that may come. That is disruption of telecommunications or transport or energy infrastructures and networks and services. This is a true threat or hybrid threat of the future. We had the privilege to support the presidency in a small part with our cooperation with BELSPO as a member of ESPI, and looking forward to do this also in the future. You made a very interesting statement. You said, pull common resources from security and defense. You mentioned, which is really a prime example, the 100 million that you put from what is military budget or security and defense budgets for dual use work at ESA. I think this is an important way to go. And in fact, you said it is one of the only ways to significantly increase. So when we talk about the scale and when we look at what other people are doing in space out there, this is certainly an excellent example to move forward. I hope this, in fact, will be, as you suggested, also being taken up by others. And a lot of what we do, in fact, is dual use by nature. Now, with this, finalmente, Arti, we move to you, and I welcome you here as the director of the United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs. We have the pleasure to work together quite a bit in Vienna. We are almost neighbors, and I'll welcome you to the floor here, please.
As the United Nations, I really should know better than to go around causing diplomatic incidents. But, well, as I say, I'm still new. I'm still in my first year. So my apologies to Hungary and to Belgium for causing some confusion. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, first of all, to Forum Europe for inviting me to address this 4th edition of the EU Space Forum. To Dan and his team, since the very first annual European Spectrum Management Conference that you hosted 19 years ago, you have set a high bar for critical debate and discussion between policymakers and industry. Every regulator, regardless of region, knows who you are, and every satellite operator as well. And I have no doubt that the quality of discussion at this week's event will be first class as well, and I'm very delighted to contribute to it now from the vantage point of the United Nations. The UN is known for its role in promoting peace and security and for the Sustainable Development Goals. The essence of that is the improvement of life on the planet and the planet itself. We know that we can't do that without space technology, data, and services. And it's precisely UNUSA's role to advance on that objective on behalf of the Secretary General as custodians of space for the Sustainable Development Goals. But the reality is that space for the SDGs is now paling as the topic of space sustainability takes center stage. I'm not actually going to give a speech on European affairs, as probably I should have done, but it's more about seeing Europe in the broader global context. So I hope you will have a sense of where I'm coming from. We have space sustainability as a topic really dominating the narrative on the global stage. It takes front and center stage all the time, repeatedly, to the point that we can no longer prioritize the interests of normal citizens. We talk about them second. And I'm grateful that here in Europe, you still put growth and users at the center of the policy debate. But with a growing world population, sustainability truly is the challenge of our times, and space is no exception to that. The consequences of overcrowding in space are so diverse, from collision risk to radio frequency interference to optical interference and even atmospheric ablation. All of these areas require attention in the appropriate fora, and COPUOS, the Committee on the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, is where many of them are and will be addressed. For those of you who don't know COPUOS, this committee is the birthplace of international space law. 5 treaties, a body of principles, guidelines, and resolutions, which are the fundament of the global space economy that we know today. Ensuring space sustainability is a question of both technology and governance. Even the greatest technological breakthrough will not deliver without a coherent framework around it to provide certainty for investment and growth on the one hand, and a system of checks and balances on the other to ensure global principles of equity and a rules-based order are respected. And indeed, we keep hearing different calls for new legal binding rules and regulation, and an expectation that this should come from COPUOS. But it's too easy to cry for a new treaty to govern what is becoming almost a wild west of space, really. But what we really have to do is unpack this and think about what that really means when people call for we need new binding rules. What does that really mean? The current geopolitics that we live in tell us that there is no appetite to achieve consensus around a new binding set of rules. That is not an option, at least not in the short term, regardless of where we seek to develop them. It is not by changing a fora for discussion that you will find an answer quicker when the question is a difficult one. It remains the same. What we can and what we must achieve, though, is consensus on what a sustainable future involving shared use of scarce and fragile space resources looks like, and a shared political will to make that happen. COPUOS has paved the way for this to happen with the adoption of the long-term sustainability guidelines in 2019, and now we see member states starting to implement them at national level. We're also having a dialogue with EU member states and the Commission as well to ensure that the EU space law, when it comes out, is also aligned with the LTS guidelines. Because with that one tool, governments here in Europe have the possibility to push for implementation across various guidelines, across a critical mass of member states in one go. We will continue to exchange with EU member states to encourage alignment, knowing that Europe also sets best practices for other parts of the world. In my previous life, we were called numerous times by regulators in Africa asking for examples of how things were done in Europe. So it's very important that Europe realizes it carries a very special place in the global context. We hope very much that under the Hungarian presidency, the EU space law will indeed materialize and drive implementation, at least in part, of the long-term sustainability guidelines. But COPUOS is now doing more. Member states are realizing that the LTS guidelines were just the beginning, and looking forward that it's as much about national implementation as it is about creating mechanisms at international level to ensure space safety across orbits, including lunar orbit, as well as discussing issues such as active debris removal, mitigation, and remediation. In being here, I've actually left the 67th session of COPUOS, which is ongoing since last week. And these discussions are being informed by industry and other players right now. Last Friday, we heard from European companies like Exotrail, Eutelsat, and Safran about their work on different aspects of space sustainability. And since January, we've heard from the EU SST and from the Space Data Association on SSA, and multiple times from Astroscale on active debris removal as well, both technical and legal aspects, which are critical and controversial because of the dual use angle. At the end of this session of COPUOS, we really hope that the committee will also approve GSOA's application as a permanent observer to the committee, so that the committee can continue to be informed about developments in the satellite operator community as well. The result of this, on the one hand, is that industry starts to get an insight into how COPUOS works and how they can contribute actively. But more importantly, that the information being presented is leading to the introduction of tangible proposals and non-papers for the future work of the committee. As I said, it's not just about Earth's orbit, of course. With 100 missions going to the moon in the next 6 years alone, member states understand fully the urgent need to ensure space safety in all orbits. So we hope that at this session, we will also see the approval of an action team on consultation for lunar activities. United Nations member states are seeing the value of leveraging expertise and opportunities outside the formal COPUOS setting and are welcoming the initiatives that UNOOSA is taking to drive this. Lots of work needs to be done to unpack complex issues for delegates and achieve a shared understanding on the way forward. It's important to know that the delegates who sit in COPUOS are not necessarily space experts. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're experts from space agencies, but very often they're political attachés who have to deal with atomic energy issues, with nuclear issues, and also with space. So that's why it's really important for us to continue to bring industry to Vienna and also to bring events and discussions and dialogues like this one also to Vienna. Dan, that's an invitation for you, by the way. At the end of the day, if we as a global space community fail to preserve our ability to continue to access space services and data, it is the most vulnerable in our society, mostly in developing neighbors, Europe's neighbors, mostly in developing countries, the neighbors of Europe, who may suffer most. So UNOOSA will continue to push for a pragmatic, focused, and efficient way forward, facilitating communication and collaboration across different fora, and into international and regional organizations to ensure that we're all pulling in the same direction and informing delegates who come not only from spacefaring nations, but also represent non-spacefaring nations and developing countries through blocks like the G77. This is not just on the UN, it's on all policymakers to do their part, and the European Union is no exception. Whether it's through implementation of existing global governance like the LTS guidelines or space debris mitigation guidelines nationally, or the adoption of an EU space law. I hope we'll come back in a year's time and be able to talk about the progress that we've made. I would close by saying that the UN is really trying to motivate policymakers at the highest level to prioritize these topics. It will be discussed by heads of state in New York at the upcoming Summit of the Future in September, building on the space policy brief released a year ago by the Secretary General. And it's our hope that with the backing of member states, including European member states, COPUOS will gain even more impetus to advance on the international process, the multilateral process, for key issues such as space traffic management, active debris removal, and space resources. Thanks for having me with you. I know the UN's perspective is a slightly different one in this European context, but I think it's time for us to really see that we're not just talking in Europe about Europe. Europe really is in the broader global setting, and it plays a very important role. It is the only regional bloc that can drive progress together of a critical mass of countries on space governance. So I really hope that you will seize the opportunity and rise to that occasion to do so. Thank you.
Excellent, Arti. So we shall rise to the occasion and the challenge, absolutely. And in fact, it was good that you gave the bigger picture of Europe in a global context. So we not only talk about Europe, I try to make the point also in the introduction. As ESPI, we in fact are an observer to your body. So we try to support where we can. You mentioned active debris removal as one example, and Astroscale is an example of industry involvement. Dual use, a typical dual use case. You can remove debris, you can also move and remove other things. And I think when it comes to the R&D behind pragmatic solutions, tangible proposals that you advocate with industry on the table, I think this is a big step to be taken, to really look into, as you say, to unbind what otherwise is abstract and really see what we are referring to. You also mentioned it's not only about Earth orbit, but also the moon. And on this occasion, I would say when you talk about the moon, then the question is, do you go to the moon? And that is still a question being asked in Europe. And I can only repeat that it is a key element of space power to also go in space exploration. There are many things attached to it. It's not only about bringing an astronaut to the moon. There's a lot of capability, industrial development associated with it. I maybe conclude with a wrap-up of what you mentioned. Regulation versus space race. There's going to be a whole panel after this introductory keynote sessions. And in this, there's also the frequencies. Yeah, and there's a lot of competition on frequencies. It's about safety of orbits, yes. It's about rules in orbit, yes. It is also about having actually frequency to talk. And there's lots of money in mobile operators on the ground that try to capture frequencies that we know we want to use and need to use in space. So this is another part of where the regulation faces a space race, and not only space race, but maybe also digital race. Now with this, I believe I can now, and I'm not going to introduce Rodrigo, who is not joining us today. I think he couldn't make it, Rodrigo da Costa, Director OISPA, but I have the pleasure, Christina, to welcome Christina Janupapa, Head of Office of the Executive Director, and she will give us all we need to know on USPA and becoming a global leader. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ludwig. Unfortunately, good morning, first of all, everyone. Unfortunately, Rodrigo could not come here today. He could not travel to Brussels, so he asked me to read for you his intervention today, so I will read it on his behalf. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, space matters in our daily lives for our European Union citizens. It plays a key role on our security and our economy, in our society at large. Our latest estimation shows that global revenues from GNSS systems will rise for more than 260 billion euros in 2023 to around 580 billion euros in 2033. In addition, the Earth observation market is also expanding. We see that the EU governments are using space data and services in many different types of applications, and we heard Ludwig before giving an overview. As the use of space data and services grows, we must also address the growing threats to these critical space infrastructures. These threats are sometimes unintentional or accidental, like collisions caused by the increase of space debris, but also intentional, like cyber attacks and anti-satellite weapons. Mitigation to these threats is essential because only then we can ensure a secure and sustainable space environment for all. Our agency, EUSPA, is at the forefront of Europe's space endeavors, focusing on operations, security, and market uptake for the EU space program. I would like to share a couple of elements for you regarding the vital role of EUSPA with its work on the everyday lives of the European citizen and beyond. EUSPA is the operational arm of the European Union in space. Working closely with the European Commission, we implement many areas of the EU space program, ensuring the European Union remains a global leader in space technologies and applications. We are proud to provide the operation, security, and services. We work for Galileo, EGNOS, Copernicus, GovSatcom, and soon IRIS, as well as the EU space surveillance and tracking. These services are crucial for a variety of market sectors. We focus on 15 market segments with multitude of applications and which act as an enabler for transportation, agriculture, energy, emergency response, security and defense, etc., etc. Let me start with Galileo, the European Union's global navigation satellite system, which delivers precise positioning and timing information to users worldwide. It is a testament of European technological excellence and a symbol of our commitment to provide reliable and secure services 24/7. With more than 4 billion users worldwide, Galileo plays a major role in many situations. Similarly, EGNOS improves the accuracy and reliability of the GNSS signals across Europe, enabling safer and more efficient aviation operations, among other uses. This service, earlier this year, we introduced a new service for EGNOS dedicated to the maritime users. This service enhances navigation and safety efficiency for the maritime sector, supporting our commitment to providing specialized solutions for a diverse user needs. EUSPA has also been entrusted with the GovSatcom Hub of the EU Space Programme. The GovSatcom Hub is a critical secure infrastructure which will pull from existing satellite communication capabilities and services and share them with the EU member states users for applications such as surveillance, critical infrastructure protection, crisis management applications. At a later stage, it will also expand in pulling from the IRIS constellation resources. Since more than a year, EUSPA is also responsible for the EU space surveillance and tracking front desk. We cannot overlook that space debris poses significant risk to our space assets, and it poses also threat to civil protection risks when it comes to re-entries in Earth's atmosphere. Through the EU SST, we have the possibility to monitor and be informed on the response to these risks. Let me highlight some more developments from our side since our last conference. In order to promote the exchange of information on threats targeting space assets or the supply chain focusing on actionable information, together with the European Commission, we set up the EU Space Information Sharing and Analysis Center, ISAC, bringing together commercial entities and relevant public entities. The EU Space ISAC held its first board meeting in April 2024. Furthermore, we are enhancing the EU Space Academy to create space development programs related to security, including cybersecurity. The EU Space Academy is a learning platform that offers entrepreneurs a customized online development program with space-related business and technical courses, including training, workshops, and one-to-one mentoring. I would like to highlight some more elements in relation to security. The EUSPA Security Accreditation Board is responsible for the security accreditation of all the EU space program components and for IRIS. We operate Security Monitoring Center, the GSMC, currently dedicated to Galileo and now being extended to EGNOS. EUSPA's mission extends beyond the operational excellence and security. We also are a catalyst in innovation and market development. A key element of our strategy is the European Union's Cassini, which we implement together with the European Commission. And we heard earlier today about it. Earlier this month, we had the Cassini Entrepreneurship Days with 200 participating companies, and the attendance of these companies is growing every year. It is crucial for us to integrate Cassini activities into our overall strategy and increase the market uptake and EU competitiveness. Companies that benefit from the Cassini can receive further support to other instruments like the Horizon in Europe and to participate in various demonstration and pilot projects. We aim to close the gap between the demand and supply of space services and data, creating opportunities for startups to sell their products and to new customers and further develop businesses. Despite existing challenges, it is the best time for space entrepreneurship in Europe. Startups are particularly well positioned to leverage on the potentials offered by the EU Space Programme due to their innovation and unique ability to adapt to new business models and technologies. Ladies and gentlemen, our work in EUSPA is pivotal to the European Union's strategic autonomy, technological leadership in space. Our efforts ensure European citizens benefit from most advanced, reliable, and secure space services. We are committed to continuing this legacy of excellence, innovation, and security. Together, we can achieve remarkable progress and ensure a bright future for all of us. Thank you for your attention on behalf of the EUSPA Executive Director. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you very much. And yes, it's impressive. 4 billion users of Galileo worldwide. That is remarkable. And obviously, yes, putting forward the benefit for the European citizen and impressive figures on data usage and services and market size projections. And we all want to look forward to a bright future and make it still brighter. Absolutely. Now, with this, I believe we will have now the intervention, however, by video, because I believe Josef Aschbacher, the director of ESA, could not be here in person. And I believe we will have a short video presentation by ESA DG. Can we proceed?
Dear participants, I wish you a very warm welcome to the 3rd European Space Forum. I'm sorry not to be with you in person, but this Space Forum is taking place at a time of seismic change, with major shifts occurring, both economic and geopolitical. The United States and China are significantly increasing their public funding of space while taking steps to develop their commercial markets. New entities in the private arena, such as SpaceX, are posing a serious challenge, especially in launches and telecommunication satellites. Meanwhile, defense spending is rising across Europe, and national budgets, including for space, find themselves under increasing pressure. Space is an integral and indispensable part of Europe's strategic autonomy and is key to Europe's competitiveness, economic growth, and prosperity. Yet, Europe's position in today's global space race becomes more difficult by the day. Commercialization is progressing too timidly and too slowly, while Europe struggles to generate venture capital. The situation is far from easy. But at ESA, we are determined to face these challenges proactively and to constantly seek ways to improve the competitiveness of European space. Last month, ESA and the European Union agreed to use space to boost European competitiveness at a joint ministerial meeting held in Brussels. ESA will keep pushing commercialization and innovation and keep battling to make Europe's space industry competitive, with a special focus on SMEs. Meanwhile, we recently saw the launch of the EarthCare mission, which will provide new insights into the essential role that clouds and aerosols play in regulating Earth's climate. It underscores how space has the unique ability to support climate action. This mission is a joint venture between ESA and our Japanese partner agency, JAXA, showcasing the importance of international cooperation in space and the status of ESA as a trusted partner for space agencies around the globe. The Zero Debris Charter also continues to gather signatories. Building on more than a decade of ESA-wide collaborative work, the Charter enshrines an ambitious approach to space debris mitigation. It will drive the development of the technologies needed to become debris neutral by 2030. And in the coming weeks, I shall depart for Europe's spaceport in Kourou, French Guiana, for the inaugural flight of Ariane 6. When it thunders into the sky, Ariane 6 will be carrying more than just its payloads into space. The launcher carries the hopes for European peace and prosperity, the promise of a brighter future, and the ambitions for Europe on the world stage. Ariane 6 will return Europe to its status as a space superpower through restoring autonomous European access to space. At the European Space Agency, we believe that Europe can only face growing global competition by achieving unity across our continent. If we are to put European space in a global position commensurate with our continent's political and economic weight, we must all work together constructively and in the spirit of trust. To achieve its full potential, it is imperative that Europe adheres to 3 strategic guiding principles. First, Europe needs to increase its public investment in space. The next ESA Council meeting at ministerial level in 2025 and 2028, and the European Union's multi-annual financial framework 2028+ will provide new opportunities to develop and implement an aligned, bold vision for European space. Second, we must transform Europe's space industry, making it faster, more agile, less risk-averse, and profitable. Third, we must avoid fragmentation, aligning the various European space organizations according to their roles and mandates. World-class programs such as Copernicus and Galileo are shining examples of what Europe can achieve when acting together. We, at the European Space Agency, we are ready to play our part. I wish you a wonderful conference, and thank you very much.
So yes, thank you, Josef, although you're not here in person. I try to echo a few of the messages which are very clear. So it is clearly recognized also in ESA, the race out there on commercial and on geopolitical grounds, also including for commercial markets. Competitiveness and prosperity, competitiveness of industry and prosperity of society, I think, are at the core. And there was a clear statement that we need to step up and increase the support into the system, also the funding. And 2 occasions were mentioned. One is the ESA Ministerial Conference next year, but also the preparations and the financing of the next multi-annual framework program. I think I'd like to propose maybe 25 by 25 would be an interesting target. That is not any official figure anywhere, but I think that would be at scale of what we have been discussing here. Now, Josef also mentioned the disruption on the launchers and the SATCOM. And the launchers we talk a lot about. We talk a lot about reusable launchers. And after the 9th of July, we will hopefully enter a new era in Europe. And there are quite a good series of activities going the right direction. On the SATCOM, there's also disruption. And we've seen a change. And it's not so much in the press from what is geostationary and video to low Earth orbit and other orbits and data. And that is the perfect introduction to our next speaker. In fact, Eva Berneke, I have not, there you are, Eva. Vice Chair, Global Satellite Operators Association. And I can say from my previous life, operators are really almost at the heart of the ecosystem as an important and one of the key players. I can only underline this, please.
Good morning, dear guests, dear colleagues in the room. My name is Eva Berneke. I'm the CEO of Eutelsat, but today I'm here as the Vice Chair of GSOA, which is the global organization for satellite operators. I agree with both Josef and the rest of the speaker this morning that today Europe stands at a crossroad when it regards to space and satellite. We have opportunities to lead and deliver on our connectivity goals, as well as to fulfill the ambition that everybody has been talking about this morning. But we need to act now. We're at a very exciting juncture with Ariane 6 hopefully flying in just a couple of weeks, both for the satellite industry, but also for the broader telecom system. We're at a crossroad where space and satellite operations will become a part of the larger telecom and connectivity ecosystem. So rather than going into a lot of specifics on policies and regulations, which, and by the way, not at all the right one to do, I try to cover a little bit of where we as a satellite industry stands today. What's the role we can do and we want to play in order for Europe to fulfill the goals in connectivity and space? First of all, I want to talk about the digital divide. GSOA applauds the European Union's ambitions about cutting-edge connectivity and leveraging the innovation and creativity in order to put in place meaningful connectivity across Europe. We're in an era where digital connectivity is a backbone of economic growth, but also for societal development, for innovation. And here the satellite communications industry is essential to achieve one of the very key sustainable development goals. Of course, we want to heal the digital divide across Europe, and satellite connectivity is key to this. But we also believe that satellites can contribute to climate monitoring, disaster response, and other of the sustainability goals. In addressing the digital divide, the European Union will need to take a realistic approach that aligns connectivity goals with consumers' demand through a technology-neutral approach, where all technologies, satellite included, whether they're standalone or in a multi-orbit mix, can be considered as a cost-efficient solution. How to do this? Integration and innovation. Satellites hold a great potential for providing connectivity through a performance, ambiguous, but also reliable and resilient connectivity. But it can only be done through leveraging innovation. And most of GSOA's members today are innovating both in space, but also on the ground. We're seeing an increasing number of multi-orbit solutions, including also the discussions around IRIS², that enable higher throughput speeds, but also some of the unique advantages in terms of coverage, scalability, and sustainability. And it's in complement to the terrestrial efforts. However, ultimately, the optimum solution to deliver connectivity is in a mix of technology, pooling strengths of the different technologies to create economies of scale, reduce cost, and collectively deliver higher resilience to citizens and enterprises across Europe. As space and ground technologies advance, we anticipate further innovation and seamless integration between the satellite solutions with 5G and 6G ecosystems, building milestones achieved in the 3GPP, as well as in non-terrestrial network services. Cooperation in this field will be key, and GSOA recently signed an agreement with GSMA in order to leverage these integration opportunities. So innovation and integration, but space sustainability. And I think sustainability is one of the key elements that differentiate also European operators in this. As the satellite industry continues to grow and innovate, we also need to protect and preserve access to space, and that satellites that are launched and deployed are operated, but also disposed of in a sustainable and responsible manner. It's important that the satellite industry works together to implement sustainability as part of the way we operate and enable the world to benefit from our technology. Just last year, GSOA adopted a code of conduct on space sustainability to ensure the industry's commitment to space sustainability practices, and that will enable the world to use and access our finite space resources. The code of conduct has 4 space areas. It has mitigating the risk of in-orbit collision, minimizing the threat of non-trackable debris,
preserving human life in space, and finally, limiting impact on optical astronomy. This initiative is a very important step for the satellite industry, and we are in the process of continuing our effort to progress and align in this area. In particular, we're looking forward to continuing our dialogue with the European Commission around the European Space Law. So for us, the way forward in terms of policy, European policymakers play an absolutely critical role in shaping our industry's future. One of the EU's aims to establish a stable and sustainable and competitive environment for space in Europe. As the ecosystem evolves rapidly, it's essential to ensure that we have the right frameworks in place. And we need a balanced and agile policy framework. It needs to balance risk and rewards, promoting investment, innovation, and collaboration, but in a sustainable environment. It needs to support progressive and flexible spectrum policies and regimes that are adapted to the latest development in satellite services. It needs to promote partnerships between satellite operators, mobile operators, but also the public sector that will enable sustainable business models tailored to our needs. And finally, it needs to be technology neutral and inclusive, so it responds to our citizens' and enterprises' need to achieve universal connectivity. And last but not least, the world is today becoming increasingly complex and technology is evolving rapidly. Collaboration between the public and the private sector is essential to help Europe achieve our digital and sustainability goals. So in conclusion, it's fair to say that the satellite communication industry today, more than ever, is poised to have a leading role in bridging the digital gap and creating connectivity for all. I believe in the value of debate and discussion to how to move forward and how to address the opportunities and challenges. But we are at a critical moment for the European space industry. We need action now. We need to move together in order to also ensure the future for European space industry. But together we can create a space where we are a catalyst for positive change and technology progress for generations to come. But we need to ensure the right environment for the industry that continues to invest and innovate so we can deliver the digital solutions to enterprises and citizens across Europe. Sovereignty, security, and sustainability were 3 S's I talked to the entire association about just last year, and I think they are core to the way we develop space in Europe. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the collaboration and the good discussion later today. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva. And a very clear message, and maybe I resonate what you said towards the end. It is truly a critical moment for the future of the European space industry. I think this is something that is not sufficiently in the political debate yet. We need the capability to do the stuff we need to do to actually benefit from the data and the services that we want in the different sectors. You also emphasized innovation as a key driver, and Europe has been and today still is a driver of innovation. I think this is something that we need to cherish. It's not only about space, but space in the wider sense of, and you mentioned it, digital solutions. And you mentioned public-private partnerships. Yes, there are some, maybe not enough and probably not enough. And maybe I'd like to remind, this is not only about being an anchor and early adopter, buying services. Ursula von der Leyen, she said herself, it's about being a buyer, but also being enabler. And we come back to the innovation. We need also the support to bring the innovation forward. So with this, I think the circle has closed. We are almost ready for the coffee break, and I think we still have 3 minutes in the schedule, so we are on target, close to the landing. And maybe I just want to recap a few things which I noted down as we listened to the different speakers very briefly. I come back to what I just said. A leitmotif is really the competitiveness of industry, and I would add also of the economy, and I would add also of space, but also beyond space. It's about the whole thing that we need for prosperity. I repeat again, it's not only about anchor contracts and service contracts, it is also about the R&D that is needed in these systems that makes the difference, that make you competitive with innovative solutions. And I'm quite pleased, I have to say, because it's a challenge we need to address, how clearly security and defense and dual use were in the debate for economic security, for resilience, and it was mentioned, it is one of the only ways to probably increase the size of what we do today and getting closer to being a space power in Europe. I come back to what I said at the very beginning as the setting of the stage. So it's about scale, it's about economic impact, it is about power, and maybe at the very beginning and the very root is about political will. If you unpeel the artichaut and you look into what is inside that you really, really need, it's the political will. That also translates into, and we just heard it from Eva and we heard it before, act now. We do lots of strategies and papers. We need the will, we need the funding, we need the action, we need the programs, we need to get going. Everybody says it. There are two opportunities, at least two opportunities to take that step. The ESA DG mentioned the next ministerial, but also Timo referred to the next the multi-annual framework program. So I stop with this, and the only word then is really, I repeat and resonate, let us move into action. And to warm up and maybe network further, there is a break now. Maybe I hand up to you. You can tell us all about, I think there are some cookies and the likes out there. Thank you very much.